Welcome to the Working Tools Podcast, where today we will discuss conferences and masonry in the area.
Ladies and gentlemen, brethren all, welcome to the Working Tools Podcast, a casual conversation around Freemasonry. First, it's important to note that our thoughts and opinions are our own and do not reflect those of our Grand Lodge or respective craft or concordant bodies. Please connect with us and ask questions via our website at theworkingtoolspodcast.com.
I'm Matt Appel. I'm a Mason here in Mill Creek Lodge number 243 here in Mount Lake Terrace, Washington. And I'm joined by two of our other usual hosts. We have Worshipful Brother Stephen Chung from Prince Charles Lodge number 153 in Kelowna, British Columbia, and David Colbeth, who's it's King Solomon Lodge number 60 in lovely Auburn, Washington. And today we're going to discuss a little bit of my recent experience with the Masonic conference that I just went to, the Masonic Esotericism and Masonry conference, in Freemasonry conference, which was awesome, and a few other little Masonic issues in our usual informal discussion.
I don't know how you guys feel about the topic. This was kind of a loose topic. I mean, we could talk about long-range planning, maybe.
Well, we could talk about something interesting, like
nobody likes long-range planning. Nobody.
Exactly. It wasn't a great topic. We didn't. And this is the way I was when I was going in as master. I waited until the last minute, basically November, and thought, what in the world am I going to have? Because I was recreating our Shrink the Lodge, our education and lodge. And I was like, what in the world am I going to? And there was just the swirl of Masonic education was rolling in my head, and I just couldn't narrow it down. Ended up on the landmarks. And just like this, I mean, you can go to my shelf and there's 40 books, 100 books, whatever, and the internet full of papers and our drive full of papers. In here I stumble on our Tribune. Come on.
I have a few books over there for looks, right?
We were somewhere.
One, two, three, four. I got 8. One's the Knights Templar.
When my family and I were back at in Pennsylvania, we went to a bookstore that they had there. It was really one of these multi-story affairs. It was a really nice place, and locally owned place, not a Barnes and Noble or whatever. But they had, although we'd be willing to take, if Barnes and Noble wants to sponsor us, we're willing to accept that. They literally had a table of old, kind of abused-looking books, but they would sell you them by the yard, so that you could put them on your bookshelf to have them behind you.
So I got a couple of comments sent to me the other day, right? And appreciating our podcast, right? And apparently the United Grand Lodge of England really likes our podcast concept, and they decided to get their own going. Right, so they've gone into competition with us, and the United Grand Lodge of England is now having a podcast.
They're not going to call it the Working Tools, are they?
I know. So I sent a link in the chat room.
We may have to, if they did, we may have to sue for copyright infringement.
Right? Yeah.
I can imagine suing the ugly.
I wondered when we joined this podcast, because there was the Working Tools magazine for a few years. And I was sort of wondering if we were going to run foul of that, but nobody ever mentioned it, so I figured I'd just not mention it either.
I never heard of it.
Oh yeah, it was a magazine. I think they might have. I don't know if they ever had a podcast, but it was an independent Masonic magazine. It was pretty good.
Cool.
Well, speaking of recognition, that's kind of what that first article was about from Kurt Gazzo, who, by the way, Kurt is a patron. And a listener of our podcast as well as other ones, and so we really appreciate if Kurt is listening to this. If we do make this a show, thank you, Kurt.
Yes,
and at some point,
he even mentioned us in his article.
Yes, exactly. He gave us a good shout out, and he was talking about learning and lodge education, that kind of stuff. And so, but the idea of the proliferation of education and lectures and things online, especially because of COVID, And so I think it was cool. I know of probably at least a half dozen or so new podcasts that came online through COVID. And I think several of them are still going. And maybe ashamed to say it, that I don't listen to as many as I probably should. Usually if I default to one, it's the Short Talk Bulletin podcast.
Well, it's funny you say that, because I can really appreciate that. I was telling another brother how I was trying to fit more of them little notches in the 24-inch gauge, so I could have more hours in the day, right? So I could read more and listen to more podcasts, right?
You
Just
got
don't
to
have
listen to
enough
them
hours in the
on
day.
1.5 speed, so you get through.
Oh, there we go. Yeah. Slow the speed down.
I will say not to continue to talk about it, but the Esotericism and Masonry conference that I was at for the last 2.5 days,
I think
one
he was
of the
excited about that.
it was awesome, dude. It was just so good.
He was totally fanboying out.
I was.
It was good. That's good.
One of the people who was a speaker who was on Zoom, unfortunately, he wasn't there in person, was Ben Wallace, who used to host the I can't remember it now. It was a Masonic podcast. It was out of North Carolina, the Masonian or something like that. It was really good. It was one of my favorites, but they stopped doing it a while ago. They only did 60 or 70 episodes, but it was really, really good. It was one of my favorites. They would talk about like the most mundane things. They would talk about the Grand Lodge resolutions that they were going to be voting on that year, and they did it in such a way that I was interested in the Grand Lodge resolutions from freaking North Carolina. That's
wasn't it a couple of guys
miles away?
Wasn't it a couple of guys, and it was kind of a radio show style?
Yeah. They had there in like
I've seen that. Yeah,
it looked like a bar, sort of. Yeah. Yep. It was a great one though. I liked that one a lot.
Yeah, they were funny.
But anyway, so I got to talk to Ben Wallace. It was
That's awesome, man. That's awesome.
I'd be curious to know why some of them go. I guess it just maybe they get bored of talking about things. Or
I actually asked Ben. I sort of jokingly asked, "So what happened to the podcast? It's been 5 years, kind of thing." And he said one of the reasons that he stopped doing it was that he wanted to talk more about more esoteric-y, secret-y things. That's what more excited him personally as a Mason, and you can't really do that in a podcast format. So the Grand Lodges frown upon that sort of thing. So he stopped doing it. Mostly for that reason, I guess. But yeah,
interesting.
Because his presentation today, it was today. Today was very, very esoteric and talking about specific parts of the ritual and stuff, and it was really interesting.
It's too bad they can't find a happy medium where you can talk about things that are non-specific or non-secretive, if you will, and then also have that outlet, I guess, like this kind of, that it's a little more conversational. I think we still get into some deep parts sometimes, and maybe we skate around the edges on things sometimes that we maybe shouldn't necessarily, but I don't think we ever have given any secrets away for sure. But at least nothing that's not in clear text in somewhere, or if nothing else, you can find it on the internet. That's right. My philosophy is, if you can find it on the internet, it's not secret anymore.
No, not at all.
He was talking about his book, A Path to Providence. He wasn't like talking about his book, but he was talking about the subject that his book is about. They started an education program in North Carolina that I want to participate in now. That it was it's 4 days, 3 days and a half, spread out over a year, once a quarter, and they each 8 hours of education is about 1 degree. So they do 8 hours about the Enter Apprentice, 8 hours about the Fellowcraft, 8 hours about the Master Mason, and there's homework in between, and they have like serious deep discussions. He talked about some of the stuff they talked about. It's really cool.
Yeah, we need to. What's it called? Research when you're in college and not plagiarism. Yeah, we need that.
Yeah, no, he showed us the schedules they use, and he said, take as much of this as you can use. Please, go forth, do it where you can, kind of thing. So that was actually that's what this book is about. The Path to Providence book is about his adventures in forming the program.
Okay, well, that's almost exactly what I want to do with the Masonic development program, especially the degrees education part. I don't really have a solid plan for that, so that would be ideal to know more about that.
Yeah, and he said it's not for everybody, but those guys who have that, they still have they have a leadership training kind of thing, a management training kind of thing for their officers, and if that's what you want to learn, how to run a raffle or do a budget or whatever, that's great. We have that too. But if you want to talk about the Kabbalistic significance of the placement of the senior deacon as he walks around kind of thing. We have that too. And I was like, yes.
Well, maybe we can work together on. I need some assistance in figuring out how to develop that within our degrees.
Gladly.
Yes. So this is how many times have they had this conference?
6 or 8, I want to say. They didn't do it during COVID, but I think it's been 6 or 8 times now.
How many people were there?
The first one he told us today, the first one they thought they would get maybe a dozen people and they had 40. And I think he said the last one was up to 80. So, but it's gone up every year.
And this year was about 80 or so.
Yeah, I think he said the number, I think it was 78, something like that. It was almost 80.
And it was at a Masonic center? At a lodge?
No, I don't think he said. He must have, but I don't remember.
Oh, sorry. I'm talking about the esoteric conference. Are you talking about the leadership training?
Oh, yes. I mean, I was talking about the esoteric conference.
I switched gears when you didn't.
The conference that was held in Seattle here. This was, let's see, they did, I want to say 4 before COVID, and they did 1 or 2 virtually during COVID, 2, I think, virtually during COVID. And this is the first one back since COVID. So however many that was, I lost track, 7, 8.
Sure.
And I was a little surprised there were so few people there. Maybe it's the COVID after effects or whatever, but I think with people going in and out and stuff, I think there's probably a total of 50 people there, maybe.
Okay.
45 or 50.
That's still a good size. Was that a temple though?
Yeah, it was at the Ballard Masonic Center, where Occidental and Esoterica and a couple other lodges meet.
I've not been there.
It's nice. It's not like very decorated building, like, it's not, it doesn't have the starry decked heavens or the Egyptian glyphs on the walls or whatever, but it's very well maintained and it's well kept up, and that's totally half the battle, right? If you have something nice to make it stay nice. So it was a very nice facility. It was really good for that. Nice big lodge room.
Did they provide meals at all?
There was dinner. That's actually one of my comments on the comment thing, was that they should do lunches too, but they did dinner Saturday. So it was Sunday or Friday night was started from 7:30. So it was 7:30 to 9:30 Friday night. And then from 9 to, well, the lectures stopped at 5 yesterday. And then there was dinner. And then after dinner, they did a 3rd degree, but I had to leave. So I didn't get to stay for the 3rd degree. And then I guess there was social time after that. Some of the guys didn't leave till like 12:30 on Saturday night. And then Sunday started again at 9 and went to, I think I left about 10 after 5, quarter after 5 today.
Wow.
So,
with no break.
What's that?
No lunch break or no.
Yeah, there were lunch breaks Saturday and
Oh.
Sunday. So yeah, but they didn't do lunch. You had to wander around Ballard and find lunch, which is fine. In the area it's in, there's 8 restaurants in that block or whatever. It was not hard to find a place.
Oh, gotcha.
But yeah, that I personally would rather see them do lunch kind of thing. But that's just my opinion. I can understand why they did not want to take on that additional level of complexity, because yeah, that could be difficult. But they had, I mean, Jamie Paul Lamb, I sent you guys a picture of me standing next to Jamie Paul Lamb, and he gave 2 lectures on astrology and masonry. And well, one was astrology and masonry, and one was astrology and Western esoteric stuff, societies or whatever. And they were, I was telling my son that I felt like I was sitting there and all this stuff was going by me, and I was like trying to catch little tidbits as they went past, because it was so over my head. And but he was a great presenter, and it was over my head in a way that made me go, I want to learn more about this stuff. This is crazy, and it was really, the whole conference was well done. There was one lecture that I thought was kind of a dud, but overall, of the 12.
But was it a dud for presentation or content?
A little bit of both. It was not what I would if someone said we're doing an esoteric masonry conference, I would not have expected this topic to be there. And it just didn't work, in my opinion. It was, and maybe it's just me, it's just the way I was in the mindset that afternoon. But
so I like the way
you describe
that, information and the knowledge potential, I guess, and the experience, the knowledge experience. And I wonder, as you were describing it, I was thinking, isn't that what new guys are looking for? And wouldn't it be cool if we could somehow offer that at every meeting, at every event? Wouldn't that be the reason a guy would say, when he can sit home and watch his TV program, or you can go to the bar with the friends, or you can go and pick stars out of the sky, stars of knowledge out of the sky at a Masonic meeting. Man, what if we had that kind of knowledge or that kind of learning?
Yeah. That would
And
be
it was actually Zane McCune, friend of the pod, did a lecture on the esoteric, or I forget what exactly the title was. I'm going to get it wrong. It was like the esoteric meanings behind Pinocchio. And he apparently, the guy who wrote Pinocchio, the original book in the 1800s, was a Mason, and so apparently there's Masonic themes in it and that sort of stuff. I could go, yeah, that sounds right. And then the other ones I was going, it might be a stretch, but it was entertaining either way. It was interesting, and it again, it made me think about stuff and go, I want to learn more about that.
Mm-hmm.
It was just, the whole conference is really well done. And Troy and Ken, and they had a new guy helping him out this year who's probably not new, and I probably just offended him, Brent, and the three of them did a great job.
How many people?
There's about 45, 50. So it wasn't huge, and frankly, the lodge room is really big. So we sort of got consumed by the lodge room, but still, there was good 45, 50 people there, and they had
Are there
Milo Duquette, who's a brother out of California. He was the past master of the Southern California Research Lodge that does that Fraternal Review magazine. He, I think he might still be the editor of the magazine. A meditation session on Friday night. It was literally 2 hours of guided meditation, and you just walked out of there and your brain's firing on all your synapses and stuff, and you're thinking big thoughts, and it's really good. I feel like I'm fanboying again, but the whole conference was really.
It's awesome. So, are there hotel accommodations in the area?
There are hotels in the area. I know there was a handful of guys from Centralia. Another guy who's appeared on the pod, Cameron Bailey, was there. Most worship brother Cameron, and he and a couple of guys from his lodge, and they got a hotel room, hotel rooms, and they were staying in the area. So I know. Again, it's not downtown Seattle, but it's in an urban enough area in Seattle that I'm sure there's hotels in the area.
Well, several years ago, I was talking to Jim Mendoza, of course, another pod member and fan, and I was saying, wouldn't it be really great to have a fall event that is almost exactly what you're describing, where you have a Friday night kind of social? I was thinking more of a Friday night social or whatever, maybe a late night speaker or late night education, and then Saturday all day and Saturday dinner, and almost exactly. And so I didn't realize that was the course of the events for that weekend. I was surprised that there's Sunday. That's a long day, a long weekend to have more on Sunday, but it's awesome. And so we don't need to have some. We'll just plug into the Esotericism conference, and because we have our leadership conference in the spring, we have annual communication in the summer, and then could potentially tag on to Esotericism in the fall. And that's what I wanted to have anyway, was a little more esoteric idea. So if they're already doing it, I didn't know about that until last year.
Yeah, it's really cool. It's not as well advertised as probably it could be. We got to work on that. Actually, I think I talked to Troy briefly today, and he wants to come back on the pods so he can talk about they're doing their call for papers now for next year's conference. And so he wants to get on a little earlier and get the word out a little better so that they can get a few more folks there.
Well, and if they already have the agreements with the hotel or with the location, that kind of stuff too, that would be nice to solidify that, so we know exactly when the days are. People can put in their calendar and plan for it.
It's going to be the first weekend in October. They're talking to Occidental, where it was this year, and Ballard there, about doing it at the same place again. But I guess there's some. It's not final. It's not written in stone yet, but that's most likely where it's going to be.
Excellent. That sounds like a great event. I'm sorry I missed it.
Thank you for listening to today's episode, where we discussed a variety of Masonic topics as usual. And on behalf of Stephen and David and myself, thank you all for coming. As usual, please, or listening, please put some make some comments. We love to hear from people and talk with them about the subjects of the show. And also our condolences to our usual host, Jarrod. He had a death in the family, and we want him to know that we're with him, and we hope all is going well with his family. So goodbye.